Hey everyone, it's Sunday, August 11th, 2019, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. We're joined by one of our mentors, John Masterson. He will be leading a talk on a guide to components for product managers. I'm going to briefly explain the format before we get started. So the Product Mentor program has been going on for several years. It matches product leaders with product managers and folks who aspire to be product managers, who aspire to get better at product management. It's a mentorship program. As part of the program, each of the product mentors does a talk, a webcast at a different Sunday throughout the program. We have several talks today, beginning with John's. We're joined today by all the mentors and mentees in the program are live on the webcast, as well as folks from across the world watching on YouTube. I'm going to switch to gallery view if everyone could just wave. Awesome. And we're going to go around the room and do introductions. So let's begin with Alex.
Hey guys, I'm Alex. Yeah, sorry about my webcam. That seems to be working. As you can see, it should be. I have my little video icon, but yeah, it's not detecting it. So I'll try and fix that over the course of the call. But yeah, I'm Alex. I'm one of the mentees on the program. Product manager in London for a company called LexisNexis. So yeah, I've been doing it a couple of years now. But yeah, really thankful to be on this course, getting lots of good support from my mentor. So yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome, thanks. And Brian.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Postelnick. I'm a product mentor in the program. Been a product manager for 6 years. I'm a product manager currently at Angie's List, based in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Great. And Carlos.
So, can you hear me? Yeah. So, my name is Carlos. I'm calling from Spain. I work for a startup called Mr. Yev. We mainly operate in around 14 countries in South America, providing on-demand laundry and dry cleaning services. My mentor is Nis. It's a great pleasure to join to this session and to meet all of you.
Awesome. And Daniel.
Yeah, hey, my name is Dan Ponsigny. I am a product manager at a company called Moto Insight, based in Toronto. Hi, everyone.
Awesome. You're a mentor or mentee, you said?
I am a mentee.
Awesome. And John.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm John Masterson, and I am a mentor. You're about to hear quite a lot more about me, but I am currently the Chief Product Officer at a startup in London called ImproveWell.
Awesome. And Nicola.
Hey, I'm Nicola. I'm based in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and I'm product manager in 2021 AI.
Awesome. You're a mentor or mentee?
I'm mentee.
Awesome. Yeah, if everyone could say their name, location, role, and mentor or mentee. Let's move over to Syed.
Hi, everyone. Mine is going to be a bit longer. I'm a mentee, and my mentor is present, Brian. I have learned a lot from him. And I'm grateful to this group because I just got hired by Verizon, and he's also a member of the product group. So I met him through the product group.
Awesome.
And I'm going to be working as a senior product owner.
That's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Vivek.
Hi, everyone. This is Vivek. I'm based out of Bangalore, India. I'm part of the product team at Razorpay, the payments company. I'm a mentee. John is my mentor.
Awesome. And let's move on to Yogesh. You're muted, Yogesh.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yogesh, and I'm senior product manager at the company called Omnicom Health Group. And I'm a mentor, and my mentee is present here today. His name is Nicola.
Awesome. So everyone, just as a reminder, please post your questions to the Q&A section at the productmentor.com/live. As the questions come in, I will jump in at convenient times, interrupt John, and ask that question live. Just so you know, I am Nisrom. I'm one of the mentor leads for the program. I've been participating in the Product Mentor for about 4 years now, and I am the moderator for today's live stream. With that being said, John, let me switch the camera over to you and then take it away.
Okay, great. Right, spare me 1 second. Okay, so yeah, without further ado, I'm going to jump into my presentation. So for me, the presentation that I have chosen is what I'm calling a guide to components for product managers, or what I wish I knew when I was younger. And really what I'm hoping to do is, this topic is quite personal to me. It really follows a journey that I've actually gone through, from what I've been learning about really components, and obviously making my way through in product management. So I think what I'd like to do is like all good journeys is start at the start. So and the reason I kind of want to give a bit of context as to my background is because one of the things I'd like to talk about in this slot is also the frequently asked question of really how technical should a product manager be. And really, a lot of what I'm talking about today is kind of the intersection of development and product management. So for me, I began I was writing a bio recently for our company, and I was sort of slightly shocked to realize that it was 20 years ago that I began kind of my tech journey. And at the age of 18, aging myself there, I joined a database development company. And it was really here that I was lucky enough to get the foundations of my knowledge. So it really informed my thinking and potentially, really still shapes how I look at systems today. So I worked in this small company here. I'm from Ireland, as you may tell from my accent. I worked in this small company as I made my way to university. I actually studied economics. So again, not a technical degree. I don't have a computer science background. But sort of kept working part-time within this database development company. I then moved out of that and moved into, again, really completely out of the field of software, but into a large PLC here in Ireland, where I was involved in a lot of data analysis and building some systems in-house, which I designed myself, but really was the end user as well at the same time. My journey continued, where finally I found myself in Sydney, and it was there that I got back into software and originally again doing database development. Before, as the company was moving all their products into web, Ruby on Rails based technology, I moved out of that and then started into product management. So I guess I kind of feel like I am somewhat technical, and again, it hugely depends on your perspective, but I then made the move back to London, or at least back to this side of the world, in London about 3 years ago, and started joined a startup in London called AG Grid, which, very pertinent to this talk, sells JavaScript data grids. So I landed quickly in the world of components. I'm currently the chief product officer at a company called ImproveWell. And have to get my plug in for my product, a workforce engagement platform here for healthcare. But really what's been very interesting is that a lot of the things I'm about to talk to, I get a chance to try and implement those within my current role. So really just going to jump back to, the reason why have I chosen this topic? So the seeds of this topic really were planted when I first started that role with AG Grid. I simply didn't know that these things existed. I'm still slightly embarrassed to say that today. So really my eyes were really opened. So AG Grid is a JavaScript data grid. So what it offers is a huge amount of functionality out of the box into, so when you're, delivering your products for the front end. As I say, I'm going to, drop the name of a couple of products throughout this. It's very much not, I'm not recommending any one or the other. I mean, I really would say to you, go and, educate yourself and find out about these things. But I do have a very good relationship with the guys still at AG Grid, and I do think it's a great product, and I want to use myself now. So I will refer to it throughout the production. So really, what struck me straight away was, as I sat and I worked with the CEO of this company, was we had our initial conversation, was how much I could have used this product. So again, in my role in Sydney, it was basically I was responsible for delivering with a couple of systems that I was responsible for, but one of which was essentially a recruitment system, which I'm sure you can imagine had lots of lists of job seekers, lots of lists of jobs and skills and lists everywhere, basically, with places where I'd want to do filtering, places I'd want to do searching, all of those types of things. So I only tended to find out about components when they didn't work or when they couldn't do what I needed them to do. So again, I'd often be faced with, the piece of work would go into the backlog, and I would hear back from my development team that, this couldn't be done without a major refactor, because the plugin that we were using didn't support pagination or didn't. I remember one specifically where we had thousands of rows of data, and I wanted to be able to, find everyone in that list that had the name John, for example. For some reason, all my searches always involved John. But again, for some technical reasons, this couldn't happen. So again, as I kind of work through these things, I mean, there's another example of where, where using data tables this time, it wouldn't remember exactly what, your previous search. The user had to redo their searches. So again, in all of these scenarios, these are not major problems. We overcame them all. We were managed to do, we did a bit of refactoring, maybe lost a few days, a week, whatever it may have been. But in each of these cases, I think I ended up with, I wasn't entirely happy with the results that we finished up with. So as I continued, and as I sat there in AG Grid, this realization came to me that essentially I'd been using inferior solutions in the past. But also the kind of greater thing was, to paraphrase the great Donald Rumsfeld, I had unknown unknowns. So what I was more shocked at was that I didn't actually know about these things that were out there. So really, if you're going to take away one thing from my talk today, it's just be aware that these things exist. And yeah, I didn't know what to Google. So now, and I in my role at AG Grid, I spent a lot of time optimizing SEO for JavaScript data grids, so I know what to Google now. But again, casting myself back, and there may be people watching this now, is I didn't know what to look for. So with that in mind, that's why when I was asked for a topic, I decided, what, I'm going to try and share. I'm going to share the message of this because I think it's quite an important one. So then what do I mean by components? So because again, this talk isn't just about components. It's actually using components as a bit of an allegory for for a way of thinking that I'm hopefully going to explain a little bit further. So for me, components are pre-built packages of functionality. And of course, everyone here will we're looking at this, will know this is of course widely used. Every repo that you're going to look at is going to have huge numbers of packages. Your development team will pick out lots of, it's rare that they're really reinventing the wheel, although obviously sometimes they are. So every project has multiple packages, as I say. The one that always jumps to mind and probably is the easiest to kind of visualize is charts or graphs. So we all sort of know about charts and graphs. Maps is another one. Data grids, as I've spoken about. Now, obviously, in this case, it would be entirely feasible for you to go and build your own graphs, design a nice graphical interface. You could design all of the legends. You could do all the data labels, and there probably are development teams out there that would love to do that. But what I would say is, that really isn't a credible option in this case. So what I'm trying to say here today is that there's other places where this is the case as well. So really, for me, it's about picking your battles, really. There are going to be some cases where components are, you don't need to get involved in the selection of, components or packages, because that's left up to your development team. But there are going to be cases where you need to get, as a product manager, I think you do need to get involved. And really, this is what I'm saying about components, is it also represents a way of thinking. So by that, I mean, it's how you, what ultimately is the end functionality that it's delivering for your users. During this talk, I'm really going to focus on more of the UI style components. But as I say, really what I want to think is that it's really the goal of this, and of the way that I would try to approach products, is trying to find solutions, pre-built solutions to the problems that you have already. So a classic question, really, I think that sort of naturally arises from this is where does the responsibility lie for choosing these? And I think, as I pointed out over my career, I've worked in a variety of different types of organizations. I've been fortunate enough to work in organizations where the product and development teams are incredibly tightly coupled. There's a great knowledge amongst the development team of all the really a deep understanding of their end user. And I've worked with teams, and where that connection is not quite as strong. And really, the role of the product manager there is really to represent that the end user, and there's final piece of functionality at the table. So what was really interesting to me, again, my role at AG Grid encompassed a lot of on the sales side as well, sales and marketing roles. And what was very interesting to me in there was that I really rarely heard from product managers. It was usually developers that I was hearing from. So I mean, based on that sort of empirical evidence, it's suggesting to me that a lot of these times, the responsibility for these decisions is landing with development. And as I say, in some cases that's great. In some cases that works really well. But go back to the example that I gave you of my time before. That I needed to be there. I needed to be at the table to make those decisions and make those voices heard around what are the things, the features that need to be sort of delivered at the end. So I would say to you is in your own organization, where are you in this process? As a product person, are you relying on your development team to make all these decisions for you? Are you providing them with some guidance around what the thing needs to do, how it needs to look? Again, I think I say this to and Vivek will back me up in what I say during all of my mentoring sessions, is everything that I know today comes from when I've done it wrong. So I have been the person who didn't speak enough with my development team to make these concerns come through in sort of the selection of these pieces. You need to be the one at the table representing your customer. You need to be the one at the table representing that, yes, they can make the legend of the chart a little bit bigger, or they can the color points on a data grid, or sorry, on a chart can be different colors, or that level of granularity needs to be, I think it has to come from the product manager. So
hey John, we've got a question here. Sure. I'm gonna stop your sharing for 1 second here. I've got a question from Alex, actually, about your background. You've talked a lot about your background throughout this talk and how it's kind of informed your approach today. So I'm going to call on Alex here, who has a question about that posted in the channel. Alex.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, cheers. Yeah, great talk, John. Recognize you said you came from like an economics background and business background, and then you kind of learned your trade from that. Similar here, actually. I was a business background and then did a marketing role and kind of learned product and tech on the job. Still probably not at the level I want to be now, but that's kind of my background too. Just wondering, from your point of view, do you see that as kind of a negative or a positive, and how you kind of cope with that?
Sure. I mean, obviously, I'm going to say I think it's a positive. I actually do think it is positive, because I mean, people ask me the question is, how technical am I? I can sit and read code. I can't write it. It's almost like a language. I can understand Spanish, but I can't speak it. So I'm not adept enough to write code. But I think because I've built systems for myself, say, and I think I mentioned that role, I've been very much I'm very much focused on what is the end result of what it can do. So ultimately, I don't mind what framework we use. I don't mind what component we use. I don't mind, I'm not. But what I do care is that I can change the color of a chart because it has to meet sort of accessibility standards, or I can make these increment. I don't like the way that a drop down works, and that I have to I can't autocomplete by typing. So really, I'd nearly be inclined to say, for a product manager role, is that a little bit of technical know-how is good, but really for me the real focus is on what's the product going to do. And when I come to the next few slides, actually, Alex, I'll kind of address a bit more my philosophy on what's a useful way of approaching a system.
Perfect. Good answer. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, John. If you don't mind sharing the slides again. Thanks.
Sure. I'm glad you had a question. So clearly people are listening. That's a good start. Okay, great. So yes, I think, as I said, where does the responsibility for this lie? And again, like I say, I'm really open about the fact that I didn't do a good job of this in the past, and ultimately, I sort of, I rely on that. I bore the consequence of that by having these large refactors and having these pieces of functionality, not delivered for my users. So, So again, the question is, open question. This one is where is product in all of this? Another interesting thing as well is that, I think what is, you look at the different sort of almost personality types or skill sets of the different functions in an organization. And going back to my time selling these components, was very often the competitor for our products. I say competitor. Very often the alternative to people buying our product was actually they wanted to build it in-house themselves. So you very often, again, this is my experience, it won't be everyone's experience, but very often the experience will be that development teams want to take on these things and they want to build them in-house themselves. And I think, you need to be that person representing, saying, look, no, that's not giving value to the customer. Ultimately you're there to give value to the customer. And I think, as I see it, you're the voice that says, no, look, surely someone has done this before. Why can't we just build on what's done before? So you may face pushback from this, but I mean, there's a natural tension that occurs between product and development. I mean, that's every organization has them. I think it's healthy, and I think you kind of need to be the checks and balances for one another. So what I'd say is, think about and assess what are the skill sets that exist in your organization. Are you in that fortunate position where there's a great connection between tech, say development and product, and they really clearly understand? Or are you more to the other side where really you're representing that and tech are very focused on, again, maybe technically excellent in terms of implementing, but you need to provide them with more of that vision around, what it needs to do. So I think, as I say, assess where you are in these things, and then find a blend that works for you. I mean, I think ultimately, and again, it's something that always jumps out in these things. And again, I've been in teams that do it well and teams that don't do it well. You have to develop that connection and that relationship between product and development anyway. That's key to the success of any company, I suppose. Is getting good development out there, is working on that relationship. So this is an opportunity perhaps to do that. You need to give development the scope to choose the bits that they want. But equally, you need to just be clear as to what you need this thing to do, and try and think into the future a little bit of, what you think it's going to need to do in the next whatever number of iterations. Right. So this neatly brings me on to a sort of I guess in a way, what I would call my philosophy for product management, which is a bit of an extension of my initial title, but really it's this idea of really component-based thinking. So for me, component-based thinking is it's about being able to look at your system and look at any prospective new system that you have, and break it down into different components. Now, in some of those cases, they may be actual components. So it might be, it has 10 data grids, 5 charts, whatever else it might be, a map, so again, I've and many of these pieces might be technical. So again, I'm not getting into what frameworks you're using. I'm not getting into what's the back-end technology, what's the hosting, all that kind of stuff. So, now those things are there, but that's not your purview. That's obviously, that lives with your development team. But I do think you're almost thinking about it in terms of bits of functionality. So really to kind of illustrate this, I'd like to point to, say, again, we're building a real estate site. So for me, and again, at a very simplistic level, I might think, okay, right, this needs a login. So it needs to login. Then I'm going to have a landing page with a search element. Then I'm going to have a listing view. Again, one of my old friends' data grids. I'm going to have a map view because I want to see where the properties are. And then I'm going to have web forms with various fields. So sort of, I guess, almost ideologically, I'm thinking, okay, it's 20, 25 pieces almost. And then, or blocks. So again, you're trying to break it down into these blocks. And then you're trying to look at it and say, okay, well, let's try and make as many of these blocks be as kind of the same size as they can be. And then this is where I think you start saying, okay, right, well, I've got 25 blocks in my system. Which of those is really the special piece for me? So I'm going to get my shopping list of all the things I need. So I need, in this case, a data grid. I need some form of a login component. Again, it's a classic one that I think often gets rebuilt every time. It all seems to be done at the start of a project, is, you spend the first 3 months logging in. I think what I'd always say to that is that none of your users are ever going to call you up and say, it's so unbelievable the way I was able to log in today. Really, that was a really good part of your system. So that's just taken for granted. So therefore, it should be applied, an appropriate amount of effort should be applied to that. So you get your shopping list and you try to think through. And again, this comes, for me, it comes with experience, and it comes with really, educating yourself. Is right. What are the different things that can be on my shopping list? So it could be things like, I think, as I mentioned, right, you need a map. So you might need, you think about date pickers. Again, date pickers all behave differently in different browsers, which can deliver a bit of a weird experience. So maybe you need to think about something there. In terms of when you're looking at fields, the way that people interact with those fields around, choosing, multi-select drop-downs, single select, do they need to be able to easily delete them? All these types of things. Again, I believe these are things that you should kind of address once, and then they just kind of go into your, they just become part of the blocks that you use to build your software. So once you've engaged or you've prepared your shopping list, it's then a case of, right, now go and engage with your technical team and say, right, these are the components as I see it, and let's go through them in some detail. So again, what I would really be saying here as well is, like, what you're trying to do here is you're trying to solve for spending as much time as you can on the special bit of your system. So again, coming back to the example of the real estate system, might be that I've got a unique algorithm in there, or I've got some special way of displaying things on a map that hasn't been done before, whatever it might be. How much of your time are you going to spend on that versus how much of your time are you going to spend on these other components? So really, that's where I'm trying to come to with this, as I call it, component-based thinking, is trying to really maximize the amount of time that you can spend on the things that are unique and are going to actually make your product stand out and be different.
Hey, John, we've got a couple more questions here.
Sure.
I'm going to stop your sharing again here. I think you might have just answered one, but Syed, you had a question about a kind of accountability and roles. Was that question answered, or do you
I think I might not have understood it completely, but the question for John is that when you are, I think you addressed it, but when you are considering adapting a new tool or technology, is it you driving that force, or are you letting the development team come up with the ideas and the products that they are to be used?
It's a good question. It's one that I think I would say I probably refer to my experience, and I'd say I've done both. And I think you have a problem if you're forcing people to do things, first of all. So I mean, I think this kind of gets into sort of culture a little bit. So it's where possible, this does need to be done by consensus. In my current role, I would be making the final call, I guess, on the pieces. However, really it's about trying to have a communication whereby you can just get forward, right? You can choose the solution so long as it does these things.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
So if you are making that final decision, what factors would you consider in making that decision?
Good question. I mean, cost is one. I mean, these things aren't free. In some cases they are free, but cost is one. I haven't really covered into I'm about to touch on sort of a build versus buy scenario, but the one thing I would sort of say is I think, again, sort of experience tells me that effort is always greatly underestimated. And when you get into trying to again, speaking from the example of, and I really hope I'm not coming across as someone who sort of is biased by my experience, but I did have examples of when I was providing these components. Was we would have teams come and tell us, oh well, my team have said we could build that in 2 months, 3 months, and I'd be like, yeah, it took us 2 years of doing nothing else than So I think it's almost a way of trying to just have that message in your head again of like, I think selecting components is a less risky approach for some, because I think the people who are you underestimate the amount of time and effort that's gone into building these things. So that I would almost try and instill a bias in myself to select them if possible, and really ask yourself, why would you not do it, rather than why would I do it? Again, that's because the important part of your system is the bit that no one else is doing. That would be my sort of philosophy on it.
We actually have one more question. I'm cognizant here of time, but if we could address this somewhat quickly.
Okay.
Vita, you had a question as well.
Yeah. So, hey, John, Vivek here. So, I had a question around the components bit, right? I think you have answered a bit in terms of, you spoke about shopping list, right? I'm thinking of that as components. But sometimes, even those, as a PM, I'm worried about, say, scalability, right? And should I get into then discussions with development team in terms of what should be the microservices architecture? Or there's something which is not visible to the end user, but something which impacts in terms of performance, right? The TPS, the response times and all that.
I probably feel that microservices and that sort of architecture lives more naturally with the technical team. So that would be a case where I would be, again, because I can't basically advise on microservices, I wouldn't. But I do think that naturally lives a bit more with them, because again, I don't think it has. Yes, it will impact on response times, but really I think that's where their expertise should lie. So I think that one would be more on their side.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, John. If you don't mind sharing your screen again, and
Sure.
then take it away.
Okay, great. Okay. Just where else? Great. Okay, yeah. So yeah, this comes into that. I think we sort of have just discussed it there, but build versus buy. For me, and I don't think I'm the only one in this community, but projects can be quite stressful. They're full of risk. They're full of unknowns. So for me, the way I look at it is components can help with risk. So again, by taking this sort of component-based thinking, and using things that have been done before, plugging them in such a way is that hopefully that can sort of minimize and just helps you think back to that building block concept. Can sort of think, okay, well, so again, I would be looking to say, okay, this screen is the same as this screen is the same as this screen. Obviously, it's got different endpoints from a data perspective or whatever it might be, but it should allow you to sort of prioritize your backlog and the issues that you need to work on with that. I think you also need to have a bit of a thought into the future as well in terms of maintainability, improvements. If you build your own. Again, I personally have been involved in some times when we've gone and built stuff in-house, and the effort has been, very underestimated, and the end product has been really not quite as good as, not as good as what could have been available, commercially in the market. So, I think it can be a common mistake is that, we build it ourselves just because you can. And I just, again, trying to think about what are the takeaways from what I'm trying to talk about here today. It's basically have an honest sort of conversation with yourself around how much of your system are you building yourself when really you don't necessarily need to, and just really ask that question, because from what I've seen, we all tend to do it. I mean, that seems to be human nature. So really it comes back to identifying and focusing on your USP. So what's the thing that's going to make you different, and how much of your development effort are you spending on these things? And I've done a lot of big projects, and unfortunately I don't think it's often enough. Cool. So again, then, obviously, and you can see that this type of thinking and this type of approach obviously bleeds into lots of different areas as well. So where is design in all of this? So again, hopefully you've got a common thread coming through in these. What the message I think that I hope that I'm sort of bringing across is that you need to be having conversations about these types of things with, both sort of from the design stage and also into the development stage. And you need to be clear in your own mind around what you want your things to do, what you want your system to do, what you want your components to do. And I think there's no harm in sharing that with your design team. So again, I've experienced sort of working prototypes through to screenshot or to mock-ups through to Envision. But I think if it's feasible, I think you should really be asking your design teams to really incorporate implementation into a style library. So, bring them through particularly things like drop downs, again, date pickers, etc. Like bring them through what the options are, so that it can, again, you have this concept of you're solving that question once, and then you're moving kind of more forward with those. So when they're putting in building a mock-up, it could be, okay, right, this is going to be, I don't know, you call it drop down one. And drop down one in the style library says it's this drop down and it uses this library or this plugin or whatever it is. And hopefully what you'll find then is that you can actually start to apply a similar mindset to design and UX. And one of the things that I've kind of been sort of thinking about. So again, just recently completed a really big project, and one of the things that jumps to mind is how much of the wireframing of the design stage, did we overdo it in that? Did we really need to design every screen in the system? No, we didn't do every screen in the system, but you know what I'm saying? Versus really, there's probably 5-10 really core interactions, really core sort of, again, think of those building blocks, where a lot more of our time should have been spent on those, and really, rather than actually looking at some of the other screens, which are more kind of functional screens, call it. So, I think it's this sort of component-based thinking, I think, is something that can actually be applied to other areas of the system. And really, it's about saying, right, if I was to boil this down into, I'm only allowed to boil this down into 5 points, 10 points. Like, what are the 5 really main things that I should really be thinking of? I'm a big believer kind of in the power of constraints, and I think by sort of thinking about your design in that same way, I think you can actually get a lot. You can get a lot of the important elements of your system mapped out the design without having to go into maybe quite as much detail. Right. So I put forward this wonderful new way of thinking. So what's the payback for all this? So why do we do it? And I think at times, I think there's a lot of work for product managers to do. I'm obviously preaching to the choir with this message, but I think, so you do have to think about a lot of things. You do have to try and do a bit of forward thinking and sort of almost predict what your users are going to need. But for me, what I think, I sort of feel like you should have like an iceberg approach where the development is the tip of the iceberg. So, when it gets to, this is putting aside things where you need to run spikes or you need to do R&D, whatever it might be. But really, when you need to do as much of the work as you can, help with as many of the decisions as you can along the way until it gets to the point that when the piece of work is ready to go to the development team, you've answered a lot of those questions already. Now, through doing this, I think you can you can engage with your team. You're engaging with your development teams earlier into the piece, so you are having conversations along the way. But hopefully, what the payback for all this is that you're not finding out midway through, as I did, that you can't paginate, or you're not finding out that you don't have a system that has one drop down looks like this and another drop down looks like this, and there's no kind of coherent sort of feel for the users. The payback is that you avoid refactoring, and I've had to do I've literally paid for this in refactoring. I've had to pull out components because they won't do one tiny little thing that I just have to do, and so you sort of think like a conversation at the very start, and it often happens at the start of the project. You pick your components and whatever it may be, but like I've had to deal with these things. I've had to face up to these. Sort of you do pay the price if you don't have these conversations. And really, ultimately, what I think and what I believe you get is that you get better features quicker. So ultimately, your users are getting they are getting better features, and then those things are being delivered quicker for them. I think you're also potentially, as you're working on your product, these components are also improving theirs and offering new features. And they're like, and often you can actually deliver those features to your customers quite quickly, which obviously is always with minimum development time, which obviously can be very advantageous, allowing you to catch up on some other things as well. So, I think that's a real. There is a payback for all of this advanced thinking. So, current state of the art. This is just a really quick summary of kind of what I'm currently using. So, I think as I mentioned, in my current system, looking at it's quite grid heavy, data grid heavy. So we have a lot of those, a lot of screens where we use different data grids. I think you know what data grid I'm using. I don't need to tell you. We've also got a charting plugin that we use. And also we spent quite a bit of time on looking at our fields, so our date pickers and our drop-down lists and, all those different bits and pieces. Just to sort of, make you aware of what's out there is that there are full UI kits where you can go and purchase, full kits where they give you lots of examples of lots of different things, which again could be excellent for standardizing your and allowing you to be more tightly defined when you're actually you're creating your tickets and doing your work for your development team. And again, depending on the size of your organization, certainly, I've started to see where you're actually choosing organization-wide component libraries. And again, the advantage you have there is that you've got people moving between projects and able to pick things up quickly. And I suppose really, as I say, it just keeps coming back to this idea of, do you want to be spending your time wiring up custom-built maps, or do you want to be spending your time, building whatever it is your special sauce? So in summary, and I hopefully I'm good for time, but I would say, don't be like me. Don't be like the younger version of me. Educate yourself. So these things are out there. With all these talks, I don't think there's so much information stuff available now. Take what is useful for you. But yeah, just be aware of what's out there. If break down your system into components. So, you can do this with a new system. You can do this with an existing system. I think it's really quite a useful exercise to go through, where you just simply say, all right, well, actually, if I was to break this apart and put it back together, what are the blocks of my system? And it'd be interesting to look at how many of those are kind of custom built. Because the other thing you have as well is that that is going to require maintenance into the future. It may often be also be a place where you've got sort of in-house knowledge, which potentially puts you at risk for that person to leave. I've sort of seen all the different, I've seen it all from kind of entirely hand rolled to much more component based stuff, and I think we all have sort of tech debt sort of skeleton in our closet, and often it can be very bespoke pieces of functionality. So I think that's an interesting exercise to do. And then I think the final piece is trying to find your blend, like trying to find the way. How can you engage with your design as the UX is being done? Can you involve them in some of these decisions, and really, finding a way that you can get appropriate input from them. And similarly, how can you work with your development team so that really, again, I'll always say, like, for me, product management is about making a sort of a frictionless machine where you can take something from an idea through to execution in your system. And I believe that this method of thinking and this selection of really building on other people's hard work can allow you to remove some of that friction, and hopefully that's giving you a smoother development experience. And I really believe that's at the heart of a really successful software company is being able to get your units of work through your system as frictionlessly as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, John. We've got a couple questions, not a ton of time, but
okay, great.
Let's try to get to all of them. I'll start with Syed.
Hi, John. So I have a question that, let's say you inherited a badly built product, and you have the option to either make improvements to the product or rebuild from scratch. I was wondering if you can kind of explain and justify factors you would use in deciding either of the two options that I just mentioned. So,
yeah, I've faced this question like many times, and again, rebuild from scratch are words that are, fill me with some level of dread, I would say, because they're often. So I certainly would go through this concept of looking at things sort of, breaking it down into different components. Look very closely at can you refactor certain elements of it? Can you introduce, could you do it on a kind of modular basis and start to, I think inevitably, like these large, the bigger the project, the more risk. And I'm very risk focused, I would say. So yeah, I would fully explore the option to not to rebuild from scratch, basically. And then if you have to, then just be as honest as you can about how do you really need, which bits do you really need? Try and get some data in there as well around, because I really think that we all have inherent biases as product managers. We all build the stuff that we want to build, versus so just be really aware of those biases.
At which point would you, let's say, decide that, okay, we just have to start over?
I mean, that's a very open-ended, broad question.
I'm sorry. No, we face a similar situation, and then we are still like in a quandary as to what to do, because it's our tool is spaghetti code.
Yeah,
and then I guess our manager wants us to work, but the developer's opinion is it's just easier to rebuild the entire thing. So we're kind of stuck. That's what I was asking.
I mean, like there's probably lots of opinions even in this group, and it's a question that we face a lot. I would say that the starting from scratch always seems like a really appealing sort of, everything's going to be wonderful in the new world, and we're going to have this great new code. It's all going to be fast, and I don't want to sound cynical and say you're just going to inherit new problems, but just go into it with your eyes open, which is, you're going to have to rebuild a lot of stuff, and you're going to underestimate the thousands of hours that have gone into your current system. Yes, it may well have spaghetti code, but you're going to see bugs again that you thought you'd never see again, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, but equally you have to keep on have to keep up to date with modern frameworks, and because you need for recruitment and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry I can't give you like a direct answer, but just
you did give me some insights, so thank you.
Okay, rebuild it from scratch. There you go, easy answer. just don't blame me.
We've also got a question from Candice.
Hi, John. I have a question around, so what kind of the key data points you would have collected along with measuring the progress of the components, and then like what are the criteria that actually to choose those the data points you collect?
I wouldn't say that I really would have data points in this scenario. Insofar as this for me is kind of before you're launching your system. I think it's, or before you're launching a particular feature. So for me it's more you could look perhaps at a sort of what an estimate of time would be to build the functionality yourself versus what the actual cost of a component might be, and look at some sort of developer per hour cost, something like that. But I again would be very careful to look out for bias there against I have this unfortunate trait of being optimistic as a product manager, so I always think everything's not going to take as long as it does. So I think just be really careful of that one. Potentially as you launch your product, then I think then the data points becomes a bit more pertinent.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for today's discussion of a guide to components for product managers. Really, really thoughtful, really, really cool topic. Appreciate that. As always, the presentation will be posted on our SlideShare channel. Big thank you from me, Nisrom, today's mentor lead and moderator for the webcast, and to everyone who joined today here on Zoom as well as on YouTube. Don't forget, if you're interested in being a product mentor like John and like many of the people here, to visit theproductmentor.com and sign up today. If you're looking to fill a product job, or if you're looking for one, visit the jobs board at theproductjobs.com. And that's all for now. Thank you.